Okay, so are you ready to do this? Are you ready to dive into like the origins of humanity?
I'm always ready. Let's do it.
Okay, because today we are diving deep into the story of Andon and Fonta, the first human family, as told by the Urantia book. Ever wonder what it was like for the very first humans? Like, what were they like? What did they do?
I think that is something that is inherently interesting to everybody, right?
Yeah.
Where did we come from? What were those first people like?
Yeah.
And what's interesting, I think, is what the Urantia book describes about these very first humans is they were not like just primitive beings with survival instincts. They had this thing in them called human perfection hunger.
It's so interesting.
It's like this drive inside of you to seek something beyond, to always want something more, even if you don't know what more is. That's such a good point. It makes you think about, like, all of us have that, right?
Right.
Like, there's something in us that wants more.
Yeah.
But to think that they were the very first ones to experience this thing called human perfection hunger, and the names that were bestowed on them by celestial beings, I think are very telling.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So Andon means the first father-like creature to exhibit human perfection hunger. And Fonta means the first sun-like creature to exhibit human perfection hunger.
So right there we have this implication that there was something different about them
Yeah.
than even their parents. This wasn't just like evolution at work in the traditional sense. There was something else going on here.
Almost like they were chosen, you know?
Right.
Or they were destined for something and that they knew it on some level. And they even chose names for themselves. So Andon was Santan, which means loved by father. And Fonta was Santan, meaning loved by mother, which I just think is so sweet. That just speaks to their bond and the fact that there was something really unique going on, right?
Like a level of awareness
Exactly.
that their primate ancestors didn't have.
Exactly. And this yearning, I think, this hunger, this drive is ultimately what led them to break away from the tribe.
Yeah, and it took a lot of courage to do that.
Oh, absolutely. They were venturing into the unknown, driven by a force that they didn't totally comprehend. But they knew they needed to go.
Total leap of faith.
Absolutely.
And the Urantia book really talks about how they used the moon to light their way, you know,
Yeah.
fearing the night but finding a haven.
Right.
A safe place.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about the physical distance. It was about breaking free from the limitations of what they knew of their past.
Right.
It was a new chapter.
Absolutely. And this new chapter led them to, I think, what is probably the biggest discovery you could possibly imagine at that point.
Right.
The discovery of fire.
Oh, man.
And they were the first.
Yeah.
Imagine the impact of that moment.
I know. It just gives me chills. It's like, I mean, we take fire for granted.
I know, right?
But for them to be the first ones and to harness that power,
Absolutely.
it's just, wow.
Imagine that first man-made flame, not only illuminating the world around them, but like all of humanity, right?
Totally. And they struggled. They struggled to get it.
2 months.
2 months to create that first spark.
Yeah. The Urantia book really emphasizes this point because we would be like, a couple of days, forget about it.
Oh, yeah, totally.
We'll wait for lightning to strike.
Right, exactly.
But they didn't. They had this drive.
Yeah.
And this is really where I think Fonta's intelligence really shines through.
Yeah.
And Granton was strong. He made the flint-tipped club to protect them on their journey.
Yeah.
Fonta, though, is the one that figures out how to start the fire. She uses a bird's nest as tinder. And to me, that shows this incredible observation of nature and the ability to apply it.
Totally. Such a good point. Talk about an aha moment for the ages.
Yeah.
I mean, with that one fire, right, everything changes.
Everything changes.
They go from being at the mercy of everything to having warmth and protection and a tool to shape their world.
Absolutely. A pivotal turning point.
A total pivotal turning point.
Mm-hmm.
And it's with this mastery of fire that their family begins.
Yeah. Their first child was Sontad.
Sontad.
And then came 18 more.
Oh, my gosh.
And then a multitude of grandchildren.
19 kids. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot of kids.
A lot of mouths to feed.
But that's also, I mean, it's fascinating because the book talks about how they started to wrap their newborns in protective coverings.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's like these uniquely human behaviors are starting to emerge, right?
Right. Nurturing a family unit.
Yeah.
Taking care of their kids. It's really interesting.
Yeah. And they describe their dwellings as semi-cave structures interconnected by hallways.
Yeah, highlighting their developing sense of community and this kind of ingenuity with architecture.
Yeah.
It's a far cry from the, lone wolf lifestyle of their primate ancestors.
Yeah, totally. So they went from that to this. They're building something.
Yeah.
Like, this is the foundation of human civilization, this family, this clan coming together.
And tragically, their time together is cut short.
Oh, no. What happened?
So nature can be a giver, but it can also be cruel, right? And the Urantia book tells us that Andon and Fanta both died in an earthquake.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a tragic end to such an incredible life. But their son, Santad, despite being severely injured himself,
Right.
took on the leadership role.
Yeah, he took up the mantle.
It's amazing.
I mean, can you imagine having to step into your parents' shoes?
And not only that, but like after a devastating loss like that.
Absolutely.
And then to have to lead this fledgling clan.
Right.
Talk about trial by fire, right?
Absolutely. And that's where we really see the Andonic legacy unfold.
Okay, so let's get into that. So we've got this whole like thriving clan now.
Right.
Being led by Santad.
Right.
And carrying on this like torch that Andon and Fanta started.
Right.
What were these early humans like? Like, if we could go back in time and see them, would we even recognize ourselves in them?
It's so interesting to think about, right?
I know, it's so cool.
And thankfully, the Urantia book actually gives us quite a bit of detailed description of their appearance.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like they had dark eyes, swarthy complexions, a kind of mix of yellow and red,
Okay.
and very little body hair.
Mm.
So the book actually says that if you were to look at them, they would resemble more like a modern-day Eskimo than any other ethnic group alive today.
Huh. Interesting. Okay, so that's what they look like. But what about, like, their society?
Right.
Do they have their own culture, their own beliefs, even their own language at this point?
Yeah. So their language, very much like their tools and their social structures, was always in this constant state of evolution.
Makes sense.
Because they're learning so much about the world, right?
Right, exactly.
So imagine these new words that they're having to come up with for these discoveries.
Oh, yeah.
For their inventions, for all these things that are happening as they are going about their lives.
It's really cool to think about because it's like every word we speak and every concept that we're wrestling with,
Absolutely.
it all goes back to them in a way.
It does. It goes back to those very first attempts to put language to their experience.
I love that. And, speaking of experience, their belief system at this time was still really rooted in nature.
Absolutely.
Right.
They lived in a world where they were at the mercy of the elements.
Totally.
They couldn't control the weather. They couldn't control the changing seasons. So these things, thunder, lightning, storms, these were more than just weather patterns to them.
Right.
These were powerful forces that inspired a lot of awe and a lot of fear.
Yeah, totally.
And you can even see this in how they related to the animal kingdom, too.
Well, yeah, I mean, they relied on animals for survival, right?
Absolutely.
So it makes sense that they would have this, like, reverence for them.
Their lives literally depended upon the success of their hunts.
Yeah, exactly.
So they developed all these elaborate ceremonies, these rituals that involved things like animal sacrifice as a way to kind of appease these forces.
Right.
To ensure a good hunt, to maintain balance and order in the world.
Yeah, because if they don't have a good hunt,
Right.
then they don't eat.
Exactly.
And they don't have clothing.
So you can see how, to them, these things were of the utmost importance,
Yeah, totally. It really puts things into perspective.
Yeah.
I think for us, we get so caught up in our own little worlds and our own dramas.
Their own daily struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we forget about that connection,
That's right.
that the Andonites had to something much bigger than themselves.
Absolutely. That sense of wonder and awe.
Yeah. But I'm curious, they were also described as having this really strong sense of community, right?
Their clan was everything to them. They were fiercely loyal to their families. They were incredibly protective of their children. They would, go to great lengths to support their comrades.
I love that.
Yeah, and in fact, the Urantia book even tells stories about how they would risk their lives to rescue their comrades that had fallen in battle fighting other tribes.
Oh, wow. Okay. So they had this sense of loyalty, of camaraderie. That's really cool. But how do you go from being a unified clan to battling rival tribes?
Right.
Weren't they all like descendants of Andon and Fanta? Like, how does that even work?
Well, you see, you've just hit on, I think, a recurring theme.
Oh, no.
That we see throughout all of human history.
Oh.
Even the strongest bonds of kinship can be tested when populations grow and when resources become scarce.
Oh, the age-old struggle for power and resources.
Right.
Some things never change.
It's true.
So how did these conflicts even come about? Did they just all wake up one day and be like, all right, let's fight over this last mammoth steak?
I mean, I'm sure it didn't happen overnight, right? It was probably very gradual.
Right.
Just little disagreements and misunderstandings that probably over time just escalated.
Right, right.
And you have to remember, as the numbers grew, the Andonites started to spread out geographically.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Establishing new settlements, coming into contact with other clans, maybe even some that weren't direct descendants. And what started as like small territorial disputes over hunting grounds or who got what resources probably eventually escalated into these larger conflicts.
It's such a classic tale.
It is.
You know, like miscommunication and then the fear of scarcity.
Right.
And then, oh, we have to have power and all this. It's like, it's still happening today.
Still happening today.
But in this case, it's even more tragic because it's their own kin that they're now turning against.
It is. And you wonder, did they recognize that at all?
Right. Like, did they ever have those moments where they're like, oh my gosh, this is not good.
Like, look what we're doing. We're fracturing what Andon and Fonta created.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Do we know, like, does the book even touch on that at all?
You know, the Urantia book doesn't really go into detail about their kind of emotional states.
Okay.
But it does highlight the efforts of a leader named Onager, who emerges during this time, during this really tumultuous time.
Okay.
And he wanted to unify the warring Andonite tribes.
Good for him.
But not through force. He wanted to unify them through their belief system. So he taught that there was a single deity that he called the breath giver to men and animals.
Onagar, the peacemaker.
Right.
But this is kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah.
Because they went from worshiping
Right.
all these different animal gods and forces of nature to now there's one.
To now this one unifying force above all else.
Okay, so this is huge. This is a major turning point in their, like, spiritual evolution, it sounds like.
This is a major shift.
So Onagar comes along,
Right?
And he's like, hey, everybody, what if instead of all this fighting,
Right.
we just believed in one deity,
Yeah.
the breath giver to men and animals?
Right. And it's interesting, too, because he didn't try to, like, force this belief on people. He actually established, like, a center called Oban, and he sent out missionaries from the center to try to spread his teachings.
Get out. Missionaries. That's like organized religion.
Like, hey, wait a minute.
Yeah.
This is early.
It's fascinating, though, because it shows this understanding that you don't have to force belief on people. You can plant a seed and let it grow, you know?
It speaks to the power of education, right?
Yeah.
Of sharing these ideas and letting people kind of, like, come to them on their own.
And it wasn't just about, like, the spiritual stuff.
Right.
He was also really practical. Like, he was like, okay, all this infighting is really messing things up.
Yeah. He wanted to create an efficient government.
And that makes sense.
He wanted to unite these clans and give them a common purpose. And for a while, it worked. Like, they had a golden age, right?
Yeah. But then what happened?
Well, you know, I hate to say it, but I think this is another one of those examples of how even when things are going well,
Yeah.
we as humans tend to mess it up.
Oh, man. So the golden age didn't last.
It didn't. Which is kind of sad, but it makes you wonder, is that just part of our nature?
I know. It's like we strive for unity, and then we're like, let's go back to dividing ourselves.
I know, but it also makes you appreciate those individuals like Onagar that really try to, like,
Right.
lift everybody up, you know?
It's like they're trying to get us to evolve.
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of evolving, we have to go back to Andon and Fonta.
But we do.
Because remember, their journey doesn't end with their earthly lives.
Right. Like we've talked about this with other deep dives, death is not the end. It's just a new beginning. And the Urantia book tells us that they continued to, like, progress even after death. They even achieved citizenship on Jerusalem.
Wait, hold on. Jerusalem, what is that?
Okay, so Jerusalem is this world, and it is described as being just this exquisite place of beauty.
All right.
It's a higher realm of learning.
Cool.
And it's within our local system of planets.
So they ascended to this higher realm.
They did, but I think the point is they didn't just stop learning, right?
Right. They still had that human perfection hunger.
Yeah, it transcended even death.
I love it.
Isn't that wild?
But wait, it gets even crazier, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. This is the best part.
Okay, spill the tea.
Okay, so are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
The Urantia book tells us that even as they were going about their afterlife, Andon and Fonta remained aware of humanity's progress on Earth.
No way. So they could still see us. They're like these cosmic guardians just watching over us.
It's kind of a mind-blowing concept, right?
Very cool.
I mean, imagine being able to witness everything, right? From, like, the joys of our triumphs to the sorrows of our mistakes. They saw it all.
It's like they're rooting for us. They're like our own personal cheer squad.
But they also feel our pain, too.
Yeah,
right?
you see it all. It's like bittersweet. It's beautiful, but it's also kind of sad because they know.
Yeah, and imagine what that would be like for them. To be so connected to us, to have this love for this civilization that they helped create.
Yeah. And for us, I don't know, I find it really comforting. Like, knowing that even when we mess up, they're still there.
Yeah, there's something really beautiful about that, I think.
There is. I love that the Urantia book gives us this unique perspective. It's not just a dry history lesson.
No.
It's a story about love and ingenuity and this, like, yearning for something more. And it makes you wonder if our very first ancestors were capable of all of that.
Right.
What's our potential?
What are we capable of?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's inspiring in a way. It's like, okay, we come from good stock. Let's not mess this up.
Let's keep striving. Let's keep reaching for that human perfection.
Exactly. And on that note, to our listeners, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Andon and Fanta.
We'll see you next time.
Until then, keep exploring and keep asking those big questions.